Hey y'all, if this is your first time to my channel, then welcome. My name is Adrienne and I make tutorials on video editing. Today I thought I'd walk you through my workflow on how I color grade CLog3 footage using a LUT. If you're interested in more editing tips, I do have a link in the description box below. And otherwise, let's get into it. As you can see, I have my project open in Premiere, and I took a screenshot of myself just before I started recording, and so that's what's laid out on the timeline. I recorded in CLog3. First thing that I am going to do is go up to the project panel here under New Item, and I'm going to create an adjustment layer. It shows up here in your project panel. Pull it down on top of your footage. I'm going to be applying my color grading to the adjustment layer. As you can see, when you create an adjustment layer and you put it on the timeline, nothing initially happens. Adjustment layers are invisible. They're simply a layer that you can apply effects to, and it will apply those effects to everything underneath it on the timeline. Make sure your adjustment layer is selected. Go up here to workspaces and then down to color. I'm going to close curves, open up basic correction. I work in order from top to bottom. Premiere has kind of given us a cheat sheet on a good order to work in when you are color grading your footage. Personally, I like to come over here to Lumetri Scopes, click this wrench. I like to start with Waveform Luma open. Just easier for me to have one scope open at a time. So you'll see here under basic correction, we've got input LUT. We've got a couple here that are given to you for free by Premiere. I am going to apply the LUT that came with my Canon camera. So I'm going to go to Browse. I'm going to use a Canon Log3 to Rec 709 LUT. Click Open. And you can see that that has made quite a bit of difference already. That color is pretty close to what it looks like in my office. But let's keep going and see if we can really dial it in. So next, I come down, I do use the auto button. It gives me a nice starting point. Click that auto button, see what it does. Okay, it made things a little bit different, tweaked things a little bit. So now let's see if we need to adjust our white balance at all. Click that eyedropper. I'm just gonna go right over to my window. Click that. It warmed it up just a little bit, didn't it? That changed things just a little bit. Coming down to light, this is where I look at my scopes. You can see here in the middle, this is going to be me. I am pretty well exposed. I like to have me hitting right around 70 over here on the side. And that's pretty much where I am. But the window is peaking at white, and there aren't a lot of blacks down here. So let's bring the whites down so they're not peaking at 100. Just a little. And if you look over at the window, all of a sudden we have a little bit more detail in the window when we pulled those down. Whereas before it was just totally blown out white. I'm gonna crush the blacks just a touch. Just so that they're touching down there like that. Perfect. So let's close basic correction. And now we can open up creative. I don't really do anything in here because I've already applied my LUT, and I think the intensity of that LUT is just fine. We'll close creative and open up curves. The first thing that I'm going to do under curves is go down to hue versus hue, and I'm going to adjust the skin tone. Come over to Lumetri Scopes, click on this wrench and open up Vector Scope YUV, and then I close Waveform Luma. Vector Scope YUV shows all of the colors in the program monitor and their intensity level. This line out here shows you what is broadcast safe. So if you have color showing up outside of this line, that means you need to pull that color back down in your color grading process. Now, in order to adjust skin tone, we need to come down to the timeline, select the clip, not the adjustment layer. And you're going to go up to Effect Controls, down to Opacity, and I'm going to draw a mask on my forehead. I'm going to go over to Mask Feather and just drop that to 0. Let's go over to Scopes. I want to come down to the timeline and reselect the adjustment layer. Sometimes it takes a second for Scopes to adjust to the change that I've made. So here you can see that all the colors disappeared except for the mask that I created around my forehead. There's a line here that's called the skin tone line. It doesn't matter what your skin tone is. We all have red and yellow in our skin tone. So this line is actually universal. That feels not great to say, but it's true. We all have red and yellow in it. And so you need your color here that you can see to be adjusted to hovering over that line. We do that using hue versus hue in the curves panel. Come over to the eyedropper on hue versus hue and select the color here in the program monitor. That creates 3 little dots. We are going to be messing with the dot in the middle. Watching your scope, you want to change this dot up or down so that it is hovering right over that skin tone line. Now we want to select the clip in the timeline, go back up to Effect Controls, delete that mask, and then make sure you reselect your adjustment layer because you want all of your color grading to be on the adjustment layer. And you can see that changed my skin tone just a hair, just a little bit. All right, I'm going to come back up here to RGB curves. There we go. Vector Scope YUV sometimes takes a second. Okay, coming back to RGB curves. On the white line, I'm going to add a very subtle S curve. All this does is add really subtle contrast. I dropped my darks a little bit, I kept my midtones where they are, and I brought up the highlights just a touch. I'm going to quickly open Parade RGB and just make sure all the colors look evenly distributed. And I think they look pretty good. The reds may be a little bit low. Let's try coming over to RGB curves. I'm going to put a dot right here in the midtones. I'm just going to watch my scopes, bring it up just a hair. I think that looks a little bit better. Now I'm going to open up Vector Scope YUV again, close Parade, so that's taking up the full window. I'm going to go down to Hue versus Saturation here under Curves. And this is when I play with colors in the background that I just want to pop a little bit more. So I'm going to take the eyedropper and I'm going to touch the green of the wall. And I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. And I've got Vector Scope YUV open to make sure that as I play with the saturation of colors, nothing pops outside of this broadcast safe line. Next, I want my bowl to pop a little bit. So we're going to take that up. That looks like it brought up my shirt a little bit too, which is kind of cool. How about my lips? Make my lips pop a little bit. Oh, look, that's bringing a color outside of the broadcast safe line. And you can see in the project panel, my lips look crazy. So let's bring it back down, inside. Make sure we're safe inside that line. Let's close curves. And we'll go down to the next panel, color wheels and match. I'm going to just cool off the shadows and drop them just a hair. I like to cool off the highlights a little bit, drop them just a hair. I'm gonna warm up the midtones a little bit. And I'm gonna open up Waveform Luma. Maybe bring them up just a little. All right, and then I'm gonna open Vignette. I like to add just like a little bit of a vignette just for my YouTube videos. So I'm gonna drop this down and then I'm gonna feather it just a little. And then the last thing that I'm going to do, go back over to Essentials and open up Effect Controls, select my clip on the timeline, and I'm just gonna scale this where I would usually have it. So I'm gonna make this nice and big for us. I selected the adjustment layer. I'm back over here to Effect Controls, and I'm going to show you the before and after. Here's the after. Here's the before. After. Before. I think that looks pretty good. So that's it for me. I hope this was helpful. I think it's really important to know some of the steps that Premiere has kind of given us in order to make our lives a lot easier. You don't need to overcomplicate color grading. It can be easy, I think, to kind of get in the weeds and make all these little tweaks and forget to look at your scopes. So there are a few fundamental principles that you need to remember. Always reference your scopes and then follow your color correction in Lumetri from top to bottom, and it'll make the process go a lot more smoothly. If you have any tips, please leave them in the comments below. If you thought this video was helpful, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up, and please subscribe. I would also love to see you again.